Becoming an elite sports performer takes dedication, perseverance, and specialist training. The aim of this programme is to explain how sports science can improve and maintain optimal performance. In this programme, we will be looking at exercise physiology in action, psychology in action, skill acquisition, and planning for improvement in performance. To reach optimal performance in any activity, the performer requires a detailed understanding of how exercise physiology affects performance. A list of factors that affect performance include principles of training, working intensities, fitness testing, training methods, and warming up and cooling down. Sports performers must be able to manipulate the principles of training in order to maintain motivation to strive for success. Specificity. The training needs to be relevant to the requirements of the sport, activity, and more specifically, the event.
One of our key fitness training principles is specificity. So you do training, which is going to have an influence on the game that you're going to play. So there's a lot to be said for the best way to prepare for football is to play football. But there's other physiological components, speed, endurance, power, that we can take out of a football capacity and do those separately. We can do an individual needs analysis with a player. There might be a player who has a specific technical request. He needs to be quick. We can then do some additional speed work with them. It might be cardiovascular work with other players. So they all get their physical work done, they all get their technical work done, but it's specific to the demands of their game. So it's a football team, but each position will have their own demands and therefore should have their own training sessions.
Progression. The training intensity must increase gradually in order for improvements to be made.
Progressive learning, that's taking a technique and then stepping it on further. So I suppose we do that in training. We'll start off with a drill, we'll do a very basic level, then we'll take it to the next step and maybe add things in as you go along. So use lots of different techniques.
Overload. The training needs to put an increased demand on the body that it is not used to for progress to be made.
Progressive overload, that's pretty simple in the fact of does what it says on the tin. Each week or each day you overload progressively, so you can start off with 10 50s or 10 200s and you might go to 20 200s by adding one on each week, or you might go down to 1 200 but make each one faster. So you're overloading the body in some way and you're just doing it step by step.
The FITT or FIT principle refers to variables that affect overload. These are important to consider when planning a training programme, as they refer to frequency, how often you train, intensity, what percentage of maximal you are working at, time, how long each training session is, and type, which method of training you are using.
The frequency of training is very important, especially when you get to elite level. You can't do too much because they won't be able to perform when they get to competitions. So the frequency and the amount depends very much on their age, their level, their ability to cope with what they can do. The intensity, again, it's a balancing act. They can't come in and do every session flat out as hard as they can, because that will make them ill, it'll make them tired, they won't be able to perform. So you've got to play around with the different intensities. Sometimes you've got to go really slow, like they should be doing now, and other times you've got to go really fast. The type of training, again, it's a balancing act. You've got your aerobic training, your anaerobic training, speed training, lactate training. Again, you can't do one type all the time. Some weeks you might do one of everything. It depends on the coach, really.
Reversibility. If injury or illness occurs, reversibility needs to be considered when returning to training to ensure further injury is prevented. Retesting of fitness levels may be required to make sure that the performer returns at a suitable level for them at that time.
I was successful as a young athlete, and I thought that the rest would just happen. And unfortunately, I was involved in a car accident that pretty much meant that I had an injury that I couldn't sprint the way that I used to, and rather than just keep going and not be the athlete that I once was, I retired. So I retired from the sport at around the age of 21, 22, and just started working in an insurance company, 9 to 5, and just went back into normal life. And then as my back healed, I started playing football for a bit of fun, and next thing I knew, I was playing semi-professional football and almost signed professional with Plymouth Argyle. And then again, I was watching athletics and watching a lot of people that I used to compete against, and my back was fully healed, and I just thought, I've got unfinished business. And I think it was because I dreamt about it from the age of 12 that, you know, as much as I was having fun with the football, I knew I had to go back and finish what I started.
Reversibility. If you've ever been running or done anything like that, you go running for 6 months and you do that every day, and then you have 3 weeks off for Christmas or school holidays or your holiday, you come back and you feel really unfit and really terrible. Basically your body just slows down, and the adaptations that have been made for your training and through doing those exercises are slowly lost. You lose about 50% in the first 2 weeks.
Tedium. It is important that the performer and coach use a range of training methods to alleviate boredom. A range of methods will maintain motivation.
My swimmers are currently doing a very tedious or boring warm-up, as they would say. They're doing some long reps where it's very similar. A lot of athletes cope with that and deal with that. A lot of athletes complain about it. So I personally try not to make it tedious unless I really have to.
Any performer must have an understanding of working intensities. This is important to provide progression in training, and more importantly, to ensure the safety of the performer. Performers can use working intensities for a number of different training reasons. Knowing your maximal heart rate is essential to maintain safety when training. Once you know this, it is easy to calculate the percentage that an athlete can work at depending on their age, medical issues, fitness levels, and aims. Knowing your maximal repetition during weight training is also essential. It maintains safety and makes sure performers do not overload their bodies in a way that could cause injury. The rate of perceived exertion, or Borg scale, is used for a performer to explain how hard they feel they are working. It ranges from 0, where there is no effect at all, to 10, where the perception is that they are working very, very hard. The main aims of fitness sessions are predicting future performance, indicating weaknesses, evaluating the success of a training program, measuring improvement, and motivation. A variety of training methods is available to performers. All have specific advantages in various activities. A variety of methods alleviates the principle of tedium. Continuous training is used to develop cardiovascular fitness. Any sport where you are required to be exercising for long periods of time would benefit from this method of training. Interval training is based around work-rest ratios. Relays in training are excellent for manipulating this type of training. It allows performers to work at maximal efforts. Again, all sports would benefit from this method of training. Circuit training is designed to improve general fitness levels and muscle tone. It includes performers working on different exercises at stations, for example, press-ups or squats. Weight training is very specialist. A thorough understanding of the physiological requirements is needed to avoid injury or overtraining. Increasing strength via weight training is important in most activities. Plyometric training is designed to produce fast, powerful movements to increase explosive power. It is particularly useful to high jumpers, basketball and volleyball players, where vertical jumping ability is important. Mobility training aims to prepare the body for vigorous movements. It stimulates the nervous system, muscles, tendons and joints in a dynamic manner. This could be used to aid performance in any activity.
There's two sides to it really. There's the kind of technical stuff on the pitch. I'm a goalkeeper, and so I spend a lot of time doing the technical aspects of kicking, saving, save clear, handwork and diving. But equal to that, there's then the fitness side. In the last few years I've moved into the senior squad, and fitness plays a very key part. For a goalkeeper it's all short, explosive sprinting and weight stuff. So I'd say it's fairly equal between the technical stuff on the pitch and the physical stuff we do away from the pitch, power, speed work.
I do about 20 hours in the pool a week and 3 hours in the gym after morning sessions, and then also just a general aerobic work you can do around sort of at home. You can go running, you can go cycling, so I try and keep it as varied as possible because you can get very bored of the swimming pool, so I like to have a good variety.
A warm-up is important for several physiological reasons, including increased heart rate, increased breathing rate, increased body temperature, and to avoid the risk of injuries. Warm-up. Stage 1. Mobility. The idea here is to prepare the body by increasing the temperature to muscle tissue, so the muscles are ready for more vigorous activity. Stage 2. Dynamic stretching, which is important so body temperature does not start to lower again before the start of the game, race or activity. Dynamic stretching keeps the body in a ready phase for competition. Stage 3. Skill-related practice. This part of the warm-up includes practice that is related to the skills the performer will use once the activity starts. Stage 4. Cool-down. A cool-down at the end of the activity is also important. It reverses the acts of the warm-up in relation to heart rate, breathing rate, and body temperature. It also reduces the chances of delayed onset of muscle soreness, or DOMS, after the activity.
So part of our health and safety and performance enhancement measure, we would start every session with a warm-up and we would end every session with a cool-down. So the warm-up is designed really to prepare the athlete for what they're about to do. So in fact the terminology isn't great because just generally warming the body up isn't sufficient for the demands. Really it's a preparation for what they're about to do. So depending on the technical session that they're going to do, my warm-up would be different. And the warm-up really, we're guided a lot in what we do by the injury audit data. So one of the main injuries in football, and particularly because of the ballistic kicking activities, would be a quadriceps strain. So one of the main kind of injury types in football is a quad strain. So that's something we know that we're going to use the quad when we do kicking activities, and we know that it's also quite a common injury in footballers. So we need therefore to look after that muscle group and kind of develop that. I normally would get about 20 minutes for a warm-up. And that would vary from club to club, but in 20 minutes you kind of need to go from nothing to where they're ready to play 100% for a full tempo game.
Understanding exercise physiology is essential to the development of the performer. The key points are associated with principles of training, working intensities, fitness testing, training methods, and warming up and cooling down. To reach optimal performance in any activity, the performer requires a detailed understanding of how psychology affects performance. A list of factors that affect performance include mental imagery, goal setting, and the psychological aspects of a warm-up or cool-down.
Oh, I was so focused on my game that was all I thought about, building the excitement for the big occasions of the European Games or the Lions. So for me, it was just part and parcel of your job. It was a great honour to represent your mates and your club, but most importantly, it was about representing yourself on a Saturday, because if you weren't mentally there, it didn't take long to get exposed.
Mental imagery has become a part of all elite performers' training programs. It allows performers to visualise successful performance.
In training, I use visualisation to kind of imagine what your stroke looks like and how you want it to look like. But then definitely when it comes to racing, I think visualising is a really big aspect because you can really focus on the things you need to do in a race. And if you can mentally rehearse them beforehand, it helps them go better when you actually come to do it.
There are two main types: Internal imagery is where the performer sees themselves performing from within. External imagery is where the performer is watching themselves from the crowd or on video being successful. It is important that when using imagery, the performer captures as much detail as possible, including what it looks like, what it sounds like, and what it feels like.
Introduction, I'm sure, as an athlete. Darren Campbell, who's the UK School Games ambassador.
Well, my mum had always told me, you know, Darren, anything you put your mind to, you can achieve in life. So I didn't come into sport with lack of belief. I came into sport going that, you know, put in the work and you get the rewards out. So never be afraid to try. I think that's one of the key secrets to success. It's only by trying that you know what you're capable of. So for me in life, I try as many things as possible. That way I've got a better understanding at what I can be successful at. If you don't try, then you just don't know.
You've got to be extremely open-minded, be willing to try various methods of doing things. But I think just having a plan, when I did my training program and my goals, I said, all right, I want to lift 5% more weight in the gym. I want to do 5% more better time on the track. I want to do everything, you know, in these small little percentages, and you'd be surprised, after not much time, everything started to improve. And it gives you something to aim for and focus on as well. So, you know, don't give up. Obviously, you know, life is life. Some people are more gifted than others. Don't beat yourself up about it. You know, I know my weaknesses. I think the best thing you could do is understand your weaknesses and then address them.
Goal setting is an important part of the planning process for any elite performer. It often involves the coach and performer agreeing certain targets for the coming season. A common method used for goal setting is the SMARTER principle. Specific. The goals set must be relevant to the performer, respective of role or position. Measurable. There must be a way of knowing whether the goal has been reached. Agreed. The goals are usually agreed between performer and coach. Realistic. The goals must be challenging, but also within the capability of the performer. Time-phased. There must be an element of time attached to the goals. This could be the next competition, a whole season, or a 4-year process for Olympic competition. Exciting. The goals must motivate the performer to try to reach them. Recorded. The outcome of the goal must be recorded in order to set new goals. It is important that goals are reviewed regularly. If they are reached early, then set new ones. If they are reviewed and they are unlikely to be reached, then they must be changed or the performer will become demotivated. The importance of warming up and cooling down from a psychological aspect is that it aids the control of anxiety. It is important that the performers are in the right frame of mind in preparation for the start of competition.
Most of it physically is just a light warm-up for the game, and then a lot of it's just mental really, just sort of sit back and relax until full intensity in the game.
You may have heard of performers talking of being in the zone. It's important that performers switch off psychologically after competition so they can adapt back into life away from sport easily.
The purpose of the warm-up is to really get the gymnasts ready for the session to come. So you're wanting to get their body prepared in the right way. The first phase of the warm-up would involve activities running around, raising their heart rate, getting their breathing going so that you're getting the energy to their muscles. Then they would go into the next phase where they're working on getting their joints loosened up and getting their muscles ready so that their muscles are all flexible and ready for the session. The last phase of the warm-up would be preparing the basic elements that they're going to be using on the apparatus.
We do a lot of stuff, really. We do apparatus, beam, bars, full on vault, conditioning, stretching, flexibility, all that.
I've just finished competing, but I came 12th at the British Championships this year. It's great just to keep fit, just for the fun.
Well, it is really fun. There's no point doing anything if you don't enjoy it, but you certainly do in gymnastics. Very exciting, flipping through the air.
Understanding psychology is essential to the development of the performer. The key points are associated with mental imagery, goal setting, and the psychological effects of warming up and cooling down. To reach optimal performance in any activity, the performer requires a detailed understanding of how skill acquisition affects performance.
It's achieving, really, I think. Achieving all my goals and times, just improving. Hard training, like 6 days a week. I don't really have much time before school, so I do most of mine out on the roads after school, on the track. Well, first of all, you do the warm-up, do 40 laps, gradually getting faster. And then I do a flying 100, so it's just 100 from the top of the track, fast.
There are many important factors to consider when planning a training session. These include the nature of the performer. This must consider previous experience, their stage of learning, ability level, age, gender, motivation, and the size of the group. The nature of the task. It must consider what type of skill is being performed, open or closed, fine or gross, self-paced or externally paced, discrete, serial or continuous. The experience of the coach. The experience of the coach is important as it relates to their level of knowledge, the relationship with the learners and their personality. Facilities and resources. The planning of the session is dependent on the facilities and equipment available, time, and the purpose of the session.
Well, in year 6, I did a bleep test and I had a running coach there and she said I was quite good. So then I got into this club called Bristol and West and I've done it for 4 years now and I've really enjoyed it. I do 800, hurdles, 1500 and cross country. My training sessions are organised by my coach and I train 4 times a week at Whitchurch and on the Downs and sometimes at Ashton Court.
I get in the pool, see how I feel in the warm-up and then sort of set my own targets for that day. Then per week sort of look at what you want to do in the week, whether it's speed work, endurance work, and then monthly terms I've got competitions coming up in October, so in the next few weeks I'm going to Iceland for Europeans. And then in December I'm going to Brazil for Worlds. So there's a lot coming up, sort of short to medium goals. And then obviously my ultimate long-term goal is to go to London 2012. So there is a lot of goals to be set, but you just take each day as it comes.
There are a variety of methods used to present practices to performers. These include whole learning, progressive part learning, and whole part-whole learning. Whole learning requires the performer to watch a demonstration of a skill or task and then repeat the entire movement. This is useful when the skill is discrete. Progressive part learning is where the performer attempts the skill in stages and then links all together once each has been learnt. It's often referred to as chaining. It's ideal for set plays in team games. The whole part-whole method combines methods. It requires the performer to complete a task in a complete form and then break it down into smaller sub-routines. Once this is completed, it's all put back together again. This is particularly useful for vaulting, where it's completed in full. It can then be broken down into the approach, takeoff, flight, and landing. Understanding skill acquisition is essential to the development of the performer. The key points are teaching styles, methods of presenting practice, types of practice, and methods of guidance and feedback. It is important that any performer reviews their level of performance. Feedback is essential for improvement in performance. This information could come from various sources. There are numerous types of feedback that could be useful. Intrinsic, extrinsic, knowledge of results, and knowledge of performance. Intrinsic feedback is obtained from inner knowledge. In order to do this, the performer is using previous experience to know how to improve or to alter their performance. Extrinsic feedback comes from an external source. This could be from a coach or from video evidence. A boxer and coach will devise a strategy based on video evidence of both him or herself and the opponent. Knowledge of results refers to the outcome of a competition. this does not refer necessarily to individual performance. Knowledge of performance refers to the technical and tactical aspects of performance.
I know during the process how well it's going, but I'll also ask for some critical evaluation from the other coaches, because you can always do things better as a team. So I like to work in conjunction with, like, say, the games master, who can say, yeah, that was really useful, we need to do a bit more of that, and maybe that was a bit complicated. Maybe, the lads weren't quite understanding what you were saying. So, yeah, it's vital that in any learning cycle that you're humble and asking questions as much as giving advice.
SWOT, or SWOT, analysis refers to a performer considering the following factors when evaluating current performance: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
It's just a really basic tool to help you categorise all the different aspects of your performance. So as the four words suggest, you look at your strengths, so that's everything you did well. Weaknesses, things you did badly. Opportunities usually build on your weaknesses, so you look at what you can do to make them your strengths instead of your weaknesses. And threats are things that could derail your plans or the potential opportunities that you'll have in order to achieve your goals.
Notation is a detailed statistical analysis of performance. It requires the coach to report all the action in a performance.
There's a huge amount of information that you can get out of any analysis of every race, and there's so much pressure you put on perhaps yourself, specifically if it's a big race. There's an awful lot of things you don't always get right, and you really want to make sure you get them right for next time because you put so much into it. But analysing your errors is just the way to success.
Analysing performance and devising plans for improvement is the key to optimal success. Methods that can be used to analyse performance are SWOT analysis, feedback, and notation. Maximising performance requires a great deal of knowledge from both the performer and the coach. There are many aspects within sports science that affect performance. In order to produce the best performance possible, there may be elements of luck involved. But once you understand the complexity of the theories explained in this programme, you are well on the way to an improved performance.